Round 15 of the 2025 AFL season is here, and we're going to preview all 7 matches coming up this week. It's the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome on in to the All Aussie Rules Football Podcast. We've got another episode coming your way today. It's episode 41 of season 2025, and today we're going to be doing a round 15 preview for you. We'll be going through all 7 games coming up this weekend in the AFL. We'll have a look at who we think's going to win. We'll do full match previews of every match, and then we'll finish the episode with our tips for the round. So sit back and enjoy, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts listening to this. Don't forget to rate the podcast, like, subscribe, follow, all of those. Go check out the social medias. We're at All Aussie Rules everywhere, so go check it out. Without any further ado, let's jump into the football, because that's what we're all here for. And we'll start off with Thursday night football. It's over in the West. Most of our Western Australian games this season have been Sunday night games. This one, we're playing on Thursday night. Fremantle Bombers, 8th on the ladder v 12th on the ladder. One team that is certainly on the way up at the minute, and the other one that's suffering a lot of injuries, playing a lot of debutants, and perhaps on the way down. We'll see. Let's jump into this game straight away. What have we got? I mean, on paper, Fremantle looked a much better team here. The fact that it's at home also helps them. You look at their head-to-head record over the last few years, and Essendon actually have a pretty solid record against the Dockers. Last year, they met just the once, which was all the way back in round 21, so late in the season, when the Bombers weren't playing that great, but Freo also fell apart late in the season. Bombers won it by a point in a bit of a comeback win from memory. Before that, it was a couple to Fremantle, but before that, it was 5 in a row to the Bombers. So over the last 10, it's 7-3 in Fremantle's favour. No, in Essendon's favour, sorry. Completely muddled that up. So the head-to-head record suggests that Essendon have a chance here. But you look at the stats, both attacking and defensively, Fremantle have a much higher rating than Essendon. Especially defence. This Fremantle defence is... I can't see how Essendon score high against this Fremantle defence. I could be completely wrong. Looking across the board, Bombers probably have a fair bit of the football in this game, but it will just be the ground possession that Fremantle dominate. Maybe not so much out of clearances, because this year Fremantle haven't been the dominant clearance team that they once were, but I would imagine that they will dominate the turnover game. They'll control the football field and keep it up their end for big chunks of this game. And in the end, I think they'll just be too effective at both ends of the football field, and probably end up winning this one. Obviously, Essendon are missing a lot of players. There's no doubt about it. I think they're going to be having their 11th debutant of the season this year, this weekend. So that's an insane amount of players debuting. They've had like 40-odd players play this season. There's not that many left on their list that haven't had a game yet. So it's it's been a rough time for them, and you would imagine it's going to be tough, especially when you look at the ruck in this one. Bombers playing a ruckman that's barely played much football, certainly at this level, against Fremantle, who have played 2 senior ruckmen, really, over the last couple of weeks. Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy both playing split time in the ruck role. It's going to be really tough for the Bombers to counteract that area, and then you chuck in the fact that around their feet they've got Sarong and Brayshaw as well. It's just really looking on paper that this should be a Fremantle controlled game of football. At the moment, teams have actually been announced. I hadn't actually looked at them yet. They've only recently been announced. Fremantle have James Aish and Nathan O'Driscoll coming in, and after I just said Sean Darcy, he's actually out, so he's not playing. Him and Sam Switovski are both out. But, I mean, the way that Luke Jackson's going, I don't see that being an issue. In for the Bombers, Figo, Vicentini, and Ben Hobbs, and out goes Todd Goldstein and Archer Day Wicks. So, as I said, 11th debutant is Vicentini. What else do we know about these two teams? I mean, Fremantle in really good form. Overall, when you look at their win-loss record, 4-1 over the last 5. Their last loss was 5 weeks ago against Collingwood, or 6 weeks ago now, with the bye in the middle. 14-point loss to Collingwood. Since then, really good away wins against GWS and Gold Coast, both of them fantastic, as well as a home win in the wet to Port Adelaide. They had the bye after the Gold Coast win. Came out of the bye a little bit slow, like quite a few teams do. Didn't quite look at their best last week against North Melbourne over in the West. It wasn't a home game, but over in the West. But they still held on for a 6-point win. So things are looking really good. I would imagine they'll be better second up, to use some horse racing terminology. So yeah, it's just looking on paper that Fremantle are in much better form and should take care of this one. On the other side of the fence, Essendon are just 1-4 over the last 5 weeks. They were really good up until that point. But since then, like the last 5 weeks, Bulldogs lost by 90-odd points. Followed it up with a 23-point win over Richmond, which was solid enough. But a couple good performances that went down, like lost to Brisbane by 18 points after trailing by 5 goals early, was a really good effort from them. And then 2 weeks ago, Carlton, they lost by 8 points after trailing again by about 5 goals. So they have shown some good fight, but then their last week was an absolute demolition job. Geelong beat them by 95 points, and the Bombers just weren't even in that league. And I mean, I don't think Fremantle were as good as Geelong are, but Fremantle in the West is a very dangerous matchup for the Bombers. It could blow out very quickly if the Bombers aren't careful in this one. So we'll see how that plays out, but that's just my immediate thoughts are that this Thursday night football game could be a bad one for the Bombers. I don't think there's anything else too extravagant that stands out in this game. Most of the numbers aren't massively in Fremantle's favour, but it's just like the culmination. Wow, I don't know why I couldn't say that word. Culmination of it all that just kind of stacks up to end up being quite a massive difference. And for that reason, it's very hard to find a way that the Bombers win this game. In all honesty, they're going to need all their best players playing really good football in this one to even slightly have a chance. We'll move into the next game, which is Friday night football. GMHBA Stadium for Geelong v Brisbane. Second on the ladder versus third on the ladder. This shall be a good game, I think, on paper. Both teams neither have had their bye yet, their mid-season bye. Obviously, every team had the early season bye. But both teams looking kind of at different points of their season, I guess. But at the same time, doesn't matter. Probably not at this point, other than the fact that Geelong are at home here, so it should be tough for them to, for the Lions to beat them here. In all honesty, you look at the history of these two teams; they have already met this season. We're starting to see some repeat matchups throughout the AFL over the last few weeks, and that continues here. They obviously met round 3. I think it was a Saturday night game. It was meant to be opening round. Ended up being round 3. And the Lions won it. Really good win. That was at the Gabba. It was wet. But they got the job done. They won it. Last year, obviously, they met in the prelim final at the MCG. And Brisbane won that one by 10 points. It was an absolute classic, great game of football. Geelong won the one before that. You go back, they've met in, 3 prelims over the last 4 or 5 years. Geelong had won the previous couple before this one went the way of the Lions. Head-to-head record over the last 10 is 6-4 in favour of Geelong. So definitely certainly an advantage on the Geelong side of the fence in terms of that head-to-head record slightly. The fact that it's at home also plays in Geelong's favour. Their offence is probably their big point, whereas Brisbane's offence could be good. They create the opportunities, but they just don't convert it. You look at their conversion rates going inside 50. Scoring shots per inside 50 is 6% below Geelong, who are one of the best at it in the competition, but Brisbane are probably very close to the worst at creating scoring shots from inside 50s. They dominate ground territory quite a lot, Brisbane, but they don't convert it into winning games enough. Like, they don't convert it into scores, and that is their big issue. Their defense has been really good this year, but obviously Jack Payne's out now as well, so that could throw a little spanner in the works and just opens up a little concern I have for the Lions in this game, and that's Jeremy Cameron. You look at what happened to Brisbane last week, and the reason they lost was the two key forwards up the other end absolutely tore them apart. 6 goals to Jesse Hogan and 5 goals to Aaron Cadman. Once Payne went down, they just didn't really have many options back there, and it caught them out. There's no doubt about it. Put more pressure on Harris Andrews to play against one of those key tools. I think they also swung Eric Hipwood back, so it's going to be interesting what they do with their team this week. But stopping Jeremy Cameron, who's in certainly good form at the moment, is going to be a tough ask for them, I think. And that could be a spot in this game that this game just blows completely out. Max Holmes absolutely dominating for Geelong at the moment. He last weekend played the best game of highest rated game according to the All Aussie Rules rating system of anyone this season. So that was absolutely massive. I always forget how young he is as well. Only 22. It's crazy. He's going to be a very, very good player. Bailey Smith's been dominating as well. He's been getting a lot of the football. The Brisbane midfield's going really well, but there's just a few concerns I have for them, especially in the defensive end over the coming weeks, just with Jack Payne going down and how they cover that. We have a look at recent form of both teams, and as I said, one team is absolutely flying at the moment, and that's Geelong. They've won their last 5. They're 10-4 for the season. Quite a few of them have been absolute floggings as well, and they've played some good teams. Beat Port Adelaide by 70-something over in Adelaide. Beat the Doggies by 14, which was a really good win. Beat West Coast by about 40, nothing too special there. Beat Gold Coast by 24 odd points before they beat Essendon by 95. So a couple top 8 teams in the Bulldogs and Gold Coast, and some absolute percentage boosting games as well. So they're in great form, 10-4. They're in a great spot. With their run home, they're certainly looking very dangerous to finish top 2. They may even finish top 1 here and have a home qualifying final. It's all to play for Geelong, in all honesty, this year. They're looking very dangerous at the minute. On the other side of the fence, Brisbane over the last 5 weeks are only 2-3. Both of those wins coming a few weeks back. They lost to Brisbane. Oh, they are Brisbane. They lost to Melbourne by 11 points 5 weeks ago in Brisbane. That was there'd been some signs, obviously, before that. There was the draw against North Melbourne down in Hobart. But there's just been these little signs around this point where maybe things were starting to crack with their inability to convert going forward. But then they turned it around and beat Hawthorn in Melbourne with their best performance of the year, winning that one by 33 points. Then took care of the Bombers, but weren't fantastic in doing it. And it was a couple wins in a row before the last 2 weeks have been interesting for them. They played the Crows in Adelaide and should have won, but just wasted opportunities all night long, especially in that last quarter, kicking 8-15 for the match and multiple out on the fulls. Lost it by 5 points and only got themselves to blame for that one. And then last week against GWS, there were times where they looked like they were in control and they were going to run away a little bit, but GWS just kept coming and they couldn't stop the key forwards of GWS, who ended up beating them by 11 points. So the last 5 weeks has been a bit strange for the Lions. Their best is certainly good enough to win this game against Geelong. If they were able to convert their opportunities, they will certainly be in this game. But once again, I just worry that they won't be able to convert their opportunities. The last 2 weeks, they've kicked a combined 21 goals, 33. You're just not going to win too many games of football when you're kicking like that. Meanwhile, on the other side of the fence, Geelong over the last 2 weeks have kicked 32-20, so the exact opposite, basically. Most things point towards Geelong winning this one. I'm not writing Brisbane's season off by any stretch of the imagination. They will most likely find their form again. They did it last year. They were slow to find their forward efficiency, but they certainly started to bring it together later in the year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them do that again in season 2025. But at the moment, we haven't seen it consistently yet, so I couldn't back them in this game. Moving on to Saturday football, and the first one is Saturday afternoon at the MCG, and this is not one that I will be too excited about. It's Carlton versus North Melbourne. It's like the 1:10 kickoff, I believe. 1:20 kickoff, sorry, local time. So they've obviously met already this season, these two, and Carlton won it by 82 points. That was on Good Friday. How Carlton have already played West Coast twice and now they're going to be playing North Melbourne twice, and we're only at round 15, is an absolute joke of a system, but that's not what we're here to talk about, so we won't go into it too much, but just, come on. How does that happen? What to say about this game? Carlton's season's been a weird one, but when they're playing bottom-ranked teams, they dominate. There's no doubt about it. Offensively, Carlton are not putting it together at all. Obviously, Mackay's out at the moment. They've had multiple other forwards in and out of the team, but their forward line, their ability going forward and attacking has been certainly below average. And compared to where they were at this point last year, where they were one of the better attacking teams in the competition, and it was more their defence that was letting them down. It's crazy how much that's turned around, because it's now their defence that's keeping them in games. And unfortunately, their offence is probably costing them multiple games this season. On the other side of the fence, North Melbourne's still a fair way off the pace. I'm not going to say that they're not miles back. They're not at West Coast levels, but there's some concerns that they haven't progressed enough. And you look at their offense, at times it's okay. It's very efficient usually, but they don't create enough opportunities overall. And then defensively, they can get found out very quickly. And a lot of teams have put on quick scores on them, especially in third and fourth quarters this season. Gold Coast definitely did it. Collingwood definitely did it. And it's just those sort of things. Yeah, they're good teams, but if you want to be taking that next step, you can't be conceding 5-6 goals in 10 minutes too often, because you just won't win games of football doing that. Head-to-head record, Carlton 6-4 over the last 10. However, they have won their last 5, the Blues, over North Melbourne, so they're certainly in form against the Roos. Scoring well over 100 in all 5 of those wins as well has Carlton. 153 they got against them earlier this season. You just imagine that they're just going to kind of win this game all over the ground, from the midfield all the way to the forward line. If they can convert up forward, North Melbourne won't be able to stop them, I don't think. It will quite possibly be a pretty high-scoring game. North Melbourne don't play the MCG as well as they play Marvel Stadium. That's just a fact. I think they won their first game at the MCG in like 7 years or something earlier this year. But Carlton at the MCG is a lot harder than Richmond at the MCG. So This is a really good opportunity for Carlton. There's no doubt about it. The Blues can really get their season back on track here. They're currently 6-7, so a win here would get them to 7-7 and really knocking on the door of the top 8. You look at their last 5 weeks, 3 wins, 2 losses. Beat St Kilda at the MCG by 15 points, wasn't pretty. Lost to Sydney, which was a bit disappointing because Sydney haven't had a great season. Then lost to GWS down in Melbourne. So a couple bad weeks there. Followed it up after the bye. They beat Essendon by 8 points. Wasn't pretty, but they got the job done. And then again last week, not an outstanding performance against West Coast, but they won by 34 points. They got the job done in the end. And gets them to a spot where all of a sudden they can start thinking they are in the finals race. Whereas you go back 5 weeks before that St Kilda game, they were falling well behind and not looking like catching up. On the other side of the fence, Kangaroos are 16th on the ladder. They've won 3 now with a draw and 9 losses. This is probably where they finish the season, in all honesty, at 16th on the ladder. They probably get a couple more wins, but it's hard to see them passing anyone above them. Might happen. They might get on a little run. I can't see them dropping below Richmond or West Coast, though, based on what we've seen this year so far. Their 5 weeks, 2 wins, 2 losses and a draw. That draw was 5 weeks to go against Brisbane. Really, really good performance. No doubt about it. Down in Tassie, they played really well that day. Followed it up with a very tight win over Richmond. Once again, nothing fantastic that day, but they got the job done. Lost to Collingwood after being in the game for 3 quarters, so that one was an okay performance from them. They just didn't finish the game off. Beat West Coast over there at Hands Oval, Bunbury. Got lucky with West Coast being very poor in front of goal and wasting opportunities. Kangaroos' ball use was really poor that day, but they got the win. And then last week against Fremantle, they were really good. Nearly managed to steal the game over at Optus Stadium. So their form is pretty solid, in all honesty. They could well have won 4 of those last 5 quite easily. So they're certainly looking better than they did over the first 10 weeks. In the first 10 weeks or so, they only looked good in one game, in my opinion, and that was the win over Melbourne. The rest of the time, they had periods of the game where they were okay, but if you take the game as a whole, they just were letting themselves down too often. So I can see a world where they get closer than they did earlier this year against Carlton, but it's just so much to make up, and this going to the MCG, I think, helps Carlton more than it helps North Melbourne. So there's just a few factors that just are playing towards Carlton being strong favourites in this game. Next up, we head to the Twilight game, 4:15 kickoff Eastern time, so 3:45 local time over in Adelaide at Adelaide Oval. It's Port Adelaide, Sydney. This will be an interesting game. 11th versus 13th on the ladder. These two both finished top 4 last year at the end of the AFL season. And they're both way down so far this year. As I'm sure most of you probably remember, these two teams met have met quite a few times actually over the last couple of years. Last time they met in Adelaide, though, was when Port Adelaide won by 112 points. That was around 21 last year, so early August last year. Port Adelaide absolutely decimated them. They have played twice since then. They were both in Sydney. Prelim final, obviously Sydney won that one by 36 points. Controlled the game all day. And then they met again in round 6, and Port Adelaide won that one, even though perhaps Sydney were the better team on the day. Just could not kick a goal for the life of them. Finished with 10-17. So Sydney have taken the last couple, but I think... Oh no, Port Adelaide won the last one. Port Adelaide have won 2 of the last 3. I just feel like Port Adelaide kind of have control over Sydney outside of that prelim final of last year. How much different the world could have been if Port Adelaide had beaten Sydney in that prelim, but they never really got close, let's be honest. If we have a look at the head-to-head record, it's all Port Adelaide. 9 out of the last 10. The only time since 2017 that Sydney have beat Port Adelaide was last year's prelim final. So Port Adelaide absolutely have a great record against Sydney. The fact that this is in Adelaide just suggests even more so that Port Adelaide should win. The numbers on both teams are not great offensively. Defensively, Port Adelaide have not been great either, but Sydney's defence has been okay. It's probably been their best part of their season so far. It's just a fascinating drop-off so far by both teams. Port Adelaide have shown signs this year that they can still perform at an elite level. You look at their first 2.5 quarters, or at least 2 quarters, against Hawthorn, absolutely dominated that game. Stuff like that suggests that Port Adelaide can still perform really high, whereas Sydney, we haven't really seen that, except for a couple times against some low-ranked teams. So, I don't know where we sit with them. I don't think they have enough options going forward at the moment, and I just don't see a world where they genuinely have a genuine chance at making finals this year. Looking at the form of both teams, Port Adelaide 11th on the ladder, 6 wins, 7 losses. They win this one, same as with Carlton. All of a sudden, they've got finals aspirations again. A loss here makes it difficult. There's no doubt about it. They can afford to lose a game here or there. Like, they can afford to probably lose maybe 3 games going home. They don't want this to be one of them. A home game against a team that's currently in the bottom 5 teams in the competition is not how they want to make their run towards finals, because you are going to probably need 13 wins this year. Their last 5, after losing 3 in a row, they had their bye, and since they've come back from the bye, they've won their last 2 with really good performances, especially beating GWS 2 weeks ago. That was a very good performance. So their form wasn't great, but they've also been playing some really good teams. You look at 4 weeks in a row they played teams in the currently in the top 8. Well, Fremantle were 9th, but genuine top 8 or so competitors in Adelaide, Geelong, Fremantle, lost all of them, then beat GWS, and then last week beat Melbourne, who's the non-finals contender in that group. On the other side of the fence, Sydney are 13th on the ladder, 5 wins, 8 losses. The season's starting to get just a little bit too far away from them. Technically, can still definitely make finals. They could only probably afford 2 more losses for the rest of the season, though, which just makes this really, really difficult, I think. It's going to be too tough, I think. They're coming out of the bye, which is always difficult as well, so I think there's just too much pointing towards Port Adelaide, and I think the season's getting away from Sydney. They've had a really weird 5 weeks. Losing to Essendon in Sydney was not a good result. In Melbourne, was not a good result. Beating Carlton in Sydney was solid. Nothing fantastic. Got absolutely smacked by Melbourne, especially late in that game. Down in Melbourne on a Sunday night. I think it was a Sunday night. In my head it was. Adelaide then smacked them by 90 points at home. Absolutely low point of the season for Sydney right there. Yeah, they followed it up with a really good win against Richmond by 40-odd points, but they've just had a weird season. They're not playing at their best. They don't have enough options scoring goals. They last year relied probably too much on their midfielders kicking goals, and I mean Heaney and Chad Warner are still kicking goals, but we know Errol Goulden is just maybe one option going forward that's just not quite getting the job done as is at the moment. So most things pointing towards Port Adelaide being comfortable favourites in this game. Move to Saturday night football, and this will be Collingwood v St Kilda. It's at Marvel Stadium. Interesting game, this one. Collingwood coming out of the bye. Little bit of a danger game, in my opinion, for the Pies here. we look at most things on these two teams, obviously Collingwood sitting first on the ladder, St Kilda 14th at the moment. St Kilda having a really, really tough season, in all honesty. Collingwood, things couldn't be going better, but they are coming out of the bye. I'm sure pretty much all Collingwood supporters remember how they came out of the bye last year. It was really poor. They lost 4 in a row, and that was what ended up costing them a chance at finals football. They were pretty similar spot to this when they had the bye last year. A couple wins less, granted, but they were in the conversation for top 4, and then they lost 4 in a row and quickly fell apart. So they'll be looking to do that differently this year, I would think. You look at the numbers across the field. Offensively, Collingwood are certainly superior than St Kilda, but defensively they are miles ahead of where St Kilda are at the moment. And that just suggests that that's how the game will go. You look at the head-to-head record, 6 out of the last 10 for Collingwood, so only 4 for St Kilda. But they did get the last one, which was round 2 last year. I think that was at Marvel Stadium, if I remember correctly, but it could have been the MCG. It could well be the MCG, actually, now that I think about it. Probably would be smart just to have a look at it. Yeah, it was the MCG. So this one's at Marvel Stadium, which certainly plays more into St Kilda's favour than the one last year. It's pretty funny that last year St Kilda had the home game and it was at the MCG, and then this year Collingwood have the home game and it's at Marvel Stadium. I don't know where the logic is in that, but it doesn't really matter, I guess. Yeah, so Collingwood just look like the better team across the ground, especially at just getting the job done, I guess. That's probably Collingwood's the biggest strength so far this year, is their ability to, when they're not having a great day or when they're getting beaten in clearances or they're getting beaten in inside 50s, that they still find a way to stick around in the game and in the end overpowering the opposition. They've done it a lot lately, and that's probably their biggest strength, because there's quite a few games where on stats you'd say Collingwood probably lost by 3 or 4 goals, and it turns out they won by 5. So it's just a weird way that to try and figure out how and why it happens, I guess, but they do it. They get it done. They just stick in games and they get it done. It's going to be interesting to see how Nick Dacos goes in this game. I think the AFL media have talked it up already. Obviously, it's very likely that Marcus Windhager goes to Nick Dacos in this game. He's been tagging really well this season. St Kilda obviously are a tagging team. And you look at how Nick Dacos went last year against St Kilda, and he definitely didn't have a great game. I mean, I can get the stats up, but I'm pretty sure he only had about 19, 20 touches. It was one of his quieter games of the year. He had even less than that, did he? He had 22 touches, but very little effect on the game. So 9 kicks, 13 handballs. So he didn't have his best game last time against St Kilda, so you got to think that they will definitely go to him again. Worked for them this time last year. I think this is a very different Collingwood team, though, than it was last year. As I said, Collingwood have a pretty good record outside of that one. Obviously, before that, they'd won 5 out of the 6 previous encounters between the two teams. Mostly looks like Collingwood should win it, but just being at Marvel, coming out of the bye, I think this is definitely a danger game for Collingwood. It's not the end of the world losing it, but they certainly will want to jump back on the horse pretty quick over the coming weeks after that if they were to drop this. 11 wins, 2 losses, first on the ladder for Collingwood, won 5 in a row. Wins in the West against Fremantle, beat Adelaide at home, North Melbourne at Marvel. Hawthorn was a really, really big win, 51-point winners that day, and then the 1-point win over Melbourne before their bye. They're flying. St Kilda, on the other hand, their season's getting away from them quick. It started okay, taking out round 1. They fell apart, then they showed a couple wins, but their last 5 weeks, they've managed just 1 win from their last 5 games. That was against Melbourne, in Alice Springs, which was a good performance, don't get me wrong. But in that time, they've also lost to Carlton, to West Coast, the only team that's lost to West Coast this year, Gold Coast, and got smacked by the Doggies last week. 5-8, their season's pretty much done, you'd think. You can't see a world where they win 8 games coming home. I don't think that the worst team. I just think that they just lack a little bit of something. I can't quite put my finger on it. Obviously, their backline's pretty good. Their midfield's pretty solid without being outstanding, but you compare it to Hawthorn's midfield, it's not that different. And forward line, they have some players down there, certainly young players. Maybe they just need some more experience, we'll see. But that's how I see Saturday night football. We jump into Sunday football. This first one on Sunday is my All Aussie Rules game of the round. A lot of people probably would have the Friday night Geelong Brisbane second versus third on the ladder as game of the round. But I'm going with my Sunday game. 7th on the ladder GWS versus 6th on the ladder Gold Coast Suns. It is the Expansion Cup. It's at NG Stadium in Sydney. And I genuinely think this will be a good one. I hope it's going to be a good one. I could be completely wrong. But GWS are starting to play some really good football. Gold Coast did drop their last 2 before their bye, so this is an important game for them. They don't want to drop 3 in a row. It's a big game for both teams. GWS at home, their away record's as good as their home record, so I don't think it really matters too much where they play. Whereas Gold Coast this year, their away record has been a lot better than it was last year, so it will be fascinating to see how this one plays out. Head-to-head record is massively GWS all-time and over the last 10 matches. 9-1, so 9 wins for GWS, just the 1 for Gold Coast. Over the last 10, that win for the Suns was round 17, 2021. So that's now looking 4 years ago, basically. That's a big time without a win over GWS. They play each other, I was going to say twice every year, but they don't. They did last year, once every year before that, basically. What do we make of this? I don't know. They met twice last year, as I said. The first one was Gather Round, so neutral venue. GWS got the win. But Gold Coast put up a good fight, and then the other time they met throughout the year, GWS were too strong. So, looking at the numbers, it's hard to find the winner. Some prediction models suggest that Gold Coast win this. I think GWS's numbers are, for some reason, greatly exaggerated one way or the other all the time. I always find it hard to pinpoint where they are because of their style. But when they're on, they're on. Look at them last week. Jesse Hogan is basically impossible to stop. Gold Coast do have a really good, strong key defence, but they're going to be relying on Sam Collins and Co down back to really put in a good performance, because we saw what GWS did last week to Brisbane. Their tall forwards can get it done, but they've also got a lot of small, medium forwards that can really push you as well. That's probably Gold Coast's biggest strength, is their run off the half back line, but they might have to be a little bit more accountable here. We'll see how that plays out. But just on paper, it shapes up as a really good game, I think. I don't know who's favoured by any area of the ground. I think GWS are a team that certainly should be able to compete in this one pretty well. We look at the recent record of both teams. GWS is 7th on the ladder, 8 wins, 6 losses for the year, 3-2 over their last 5 matches, and the numbers look okay for them. I mean, a home loss against Fremantle wasn't great, but following that up with wins against Carlton and Richmond, getting the job done. Then a loss to Port Adelaide at home. Again, we were like, oh, what are they doing? But then last week, they travel up to Brisbane and they beat the Lions. So, I don't know where they're at, but they just keep on playing, and I just don't know where to put them at, basically. This time last year, I was seeing them as a team that would drop out, and then they finished the season really strong. So I'm not falling for that again this year, but these are the sort of games they need to win. It's not a must-win for GWS. If they want to play top 4 or make the top 4, they probably do need to win this game. Because, I don't know, 14 might be enough, but it's probably 15, maybe even closer to 16 wins to play top 4 this year, depending on how some results go. So they've already had 6 losses this year. They can't afford many more if they were to be top 4. Meanwhile, Gold Coast Suns have obviously played 2 less games than GWS this year. Same amount of wins, obviously 2 less losses then. You go back 3 weeks and they were in a fantastic spot at 8-2. Then they lost 2 in a row, had their bye. They've got a compacted finish to their season, obviously. With still 11 games to go across 10 weeks. 10 weeks. So they've got a lot of football to play still, but 8 wins already. Probably only 5 wins away from qualifying for finals. But coming out of the bye, coming off 2 losses against good teams, Fremantle and Geelong, but they need to find form again. You go back 5 weeks ago, they beat Bulldogs and Hawthorn, both up in Darwin. So they're beating some solid teams. This is another one that they would really like to win. They win this, you can almost lock them into finals. If they lose this one, people may start questioning. I won't be ready to write them off, anywhere near write them off, but people will start to come with questions if they have lost 3 in a row, I think. But this is a tough one, as were the previous couple, so we'll see how it goes. It's an important game for both teams, though. Both teams really need this win, I think, on paper. I think that's everything we need from that game, so we've got just the one game left to look at for the weekend. And in all honesty, it does not look like a good one on paper. It's Sunday afternoon at Marvel Stadium. It's Western Bulldogs versus Richmond. And boy, oh boy, does this look like a stinker. The Doggies 9th on the ladder. Things going absolutely peachy for them last week. Richmond sitting 17th on the ladder, and this is just about as tough as it gets for them, I reckon. Being at Marvel as well makes it worse. These two teams only met once last year, and it was a 91-point victory to the Bulldogs. I was at that game. It was at the MCG, and it was an absolute stinker. Being at Marvel makes it even more lopsided towards Brisbane and towards the Bulldogs. Sorry, and it's just hard to see a world where Richmond can compete in this. I know they've done a lot better than we expected this year, but this is a tough one. Head-to-head record, Doggies have won the last 3. Obviously, before that, Richmond had a pretty good run. Obviously, they were a really good team between the years of 2018 and 2022, and they did win 4 out of those 5 matchups. But it's still 6-4 in favour of the Doggies over the last 10. Offensively is the Bulldogs' number 1 attribute. Richmond won't be able to stop them. I can't see a world where Richmond managed to stop this Bulldog offense from just absolutely scoring. I'd be very surprised to see the Bulldogs kick less than 18 or 19 goals in this game. Conversely, I think the Richmond offense is probably Richmond's worst asset. So how are they going to score? I can't see them getting more than 8 or 9 goals, in all honesty. This should be the easiest tip of the season. If Richmond were to pull this win off, this would be 100% the biggest upset of the season. There's no doubt about it. At Marvel Stadium, against Bulldogs who are flying, Sam Darcy's back and looking right back to his best. There's just everything is going the way of the Doggies, and it should be embarrassing for Richmond in all honesty. As I said, Bulldogs are 9th on the ladder, just outside the 8, 6-7 for the season. Their last 5 weeks has been a little bit disappointing, but They're only 2 wins, 3 losses. Their 3 losses have been all against top 8 teams as it stands. Their 2 wins against bottom 8 teams. So they haven't beaten anyone over recent weeks, and that's going to continue here. So we need to start seeing them beat some good teams at some point. Whether we do or not, if they start to beat those teams, though, we will start to think that they are a genuine premiership contender. At the moment, as it is, I don't think they're quite there. I think they're just a level below. But if they do start to beat those teams, watch out, because they are very good with the wind behind their backs. Richmond, they're 17th on the ladder, 3 wins, 10 losses. I can't see them getting too many wins in the run home. Their last win was 5 weeks ago against the Eagles. Since then, they only just lost to North Melbourne. They only just lost to GWS 2 weeks ago, with decent-sized losses to Sydney and Essendon either side of that. So they could quite possibly have had maybe 3 wins in that period, but as it is, they're 3 wins, 10 losses. Their season's not going great. It's probably better than it was expected to, but where they are at the moment, they're just not at a level that I think they can genuinely compete with the Bulldogs. That's just my honest opinion. I know they have beat Gold Coast this year, and I know they beat Carlton this year, but this is just a whole nother kettle of fish. This is probably, on paper, the toughest game of Richmond's season, I think. That's pretty much everything I have for that game. I think there's no point going too deep into it because, I mean, it just looks like it's going to be one-way traffic. Obviously, that means there's 4 teams having the bye this week: Adelaide, Hawthorn, Melbourne, West Coast. If you're not on my YouTube channel at the moment, make sure you head over there and go check it out, because hit the subscribe button, watch some videos, because we've got mid-season reviews for every team going out over the last few weeks, and they'll all be out by the end of next week. As each team gets to the bye, we just do a mid-season review how their season's gone so far in terms of wins, losses, some key stats. We look at all the players, who's playing well, who's not, and we have a look towards the rest of 2025 and what we can expect to see from each team. So go check them out. If you're already on the YouTube, go check them out now. Otherwise, search up All Aussie Rules on YouTube, find it, subscribe, and start watching some content, because there's plenty of good information in those videos as well as these podcasts. I appreciate you for being here. Either way, let's jump into my tips for the weekend. And we lead off on Thursday night. It's hard to see a world where Fremantle aren't favourites and don't win this comfortably. I think Essendon have overachieved as well from what they've got out on the field each week. I think they've been really good. Surprisingly enough, these are 2 of the youngest teams going out on the park this year. I think Fremantle, on average, their average age is the lowest in the competition, whereas Essendon's is 3rd or 4th. It's just 2 young teams at different spots in their development, plus also injuries have obviously played a massive role on the Bombers so far this year. Fremantle by 33. It's hard to see Essendon getting closer than that. Maybe they will. They've put up some good fights recently, so maybe they do again here. Geelong Brisbane's a tough one. I've gone Geelong by 10. It's the sort of danger game that Brisbane could well upset Geelong. I'm going with Geelong just based on the fact that Brisbane didn't play very well last week. You chuck in the fact that Jack Payne is out. It's just some things looking towards Geelong being the favourites there, and down at GMHBA, we have to go with them. Carlton should be way too strong for the Kangaroos, I think. Kangaroos aren't quite there from what I've seen. Next up, Port Adelaide. Their form over Sydney is outstanding. Their ability to smash Sydney last year in Adelaide, suggests that this is going to be a really dominant game for Port Adelaide. Collingwood, it's a danger game, as I've said. St Kilda is a danger game for them. It's at Marvel Stadium, which puts it more towards St Kilda. Obviously, St Kilda play Marvel way better than they do anywhere else. But we have to stick with the top of the ladder team, and that's Collingwood. So we'll tip them. But I'm very concerned about it. Sunday football, we have Expansion Cup, GWS. I've gone with by 22 points. I think coming out of the bye, Gold Coast are just a little bit vulnerable here. And I think GWS should be able to get over the line. And then to finish it, we've got the Bulldogs by 70. Richmond could play their best game of the year and still lose this one by 20 points. Or they slightly off the pace and the Bulldogs will beat them by 100 because this Bulldogs team can score and can score big. So I'm not saying it definitely will happen, but I can definitely see it happening in this one. So that's all my tips for this round, round 15. I thank you for watching, if you're still here watching this one. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. Give the podcast a rating. Share it with your friends. Let's get those numbers up wherever you are watching this. I'm Jay. This is All Aussie Rules podcast. Next episode will be out on Monday to review all of these matches. We'll go through all the best players, best teams, everything you need to know from the weekend of football. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.